Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2. Can you hear us both? Give us some thumbs up so we can see you. Welcome to our call today. This is going to be an action-packed call. It's going to be fun. Get ready for your questions. We have a whole list of questions, David, and I have a whole bunch of topics that I'd love to go over. So this is David Van Noy. He is in the Kansas City area with me. He's with Reese Nichols. And I describe David as
join the call, but you are the only one here.
Okay, be quiet. He is my favorite systems friend. Favorite systems friend, David. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your team real quick.
Oh gosh, does anybody want to hear that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what do you want to know? Been an agent for 17 years. We have 3 salespeople on the team, including myself. I'm a listing agent only, and I have 2 administrative staff that handle all the details of the transaction. And we'll do, we're at 125 deals right now, and we'll close out 140 for the year.
140 deals for the year, 2 selling people, 2 admin staff.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I just want everybody to think about, if you're telling me that you're doing 25 deals and you don't have time to do anything else, I want you to think about this conversation. And how many people do you coach a month or a week as well?
I coach 20 agents in other markets. So that's 20 30-minute calls. So about 12 hours a week is allocated for coaching other agents in other markets.
So 12 hours a week, you coach.
Yeah.
You've sold 140 houses with a team this year, and you've led it. And so I know that you're a systems freak because you and I have these fun conversations all the time about how do we fix this? How do we make this go faster? So I had a pre-interview with David, and I gave you guys a little teaser about it. I'm going to lead this conversation because some of these things are so simple, and yet they were awesome for me to hear. And so let's start with Sphere, because I always want to talk about Sphere in this group first. What is your Sphere system to stay in touch with your Sphere?
Well, I think it's probably important to say that it started out as just a checklist, right? So I've always done a fairly decent job of staying in touch with people with my database, but probably 8 years ago, I got really structured about the plan to call them every day. So I would fold a piece of paper in half, and we didn't talk about this, and I would write their names down the night before, and I'd put a box next to it, and I would just come in and color those boxes in every day. The other thing I would do is when I called a name or saw a name, I would always, in the conversation, try to think of one other name that it made me think of, and I would call that person and say, I was talking to Shanan today, and I was thinking about you. How is Shanan? I'd make that connect. So that's how the database started. Now it's a sophisticated CRM that tracks how many times I talk to them, if we've mailed them, if they're on a listing search, if they have a market report set up for their current address. So we've built that out considerably from that checklist.
Okay, so today, your Sphere plan, because we talked about this, you have a top 100. How often do you call your top 100?
So the top 100 is a minimum of once a month. And so my CRM will tell me when I go to my top 100 if I've talked to them or not in the last 30 days. And I will go through and talk to them at least once a month. Some of the guys that are probably in my top 10, which I don't really outline it that way, some of them I talk to 3 or 4 times a week, if necessary, just about what's going on, especially if they're in business.
So if you call one of them and they don't recognize your number, what do you say to them?
You're talking about just the regular database where maybe I call someone that I've sold a house to, and maybe they worked with one of our buyer agent, and they're like, hello, who's this? Yeah, and I will say, well, no wonder you haven't been sending me any referrals. You don't have me saved in your phone. This is your realtor, David Van Noy. Save that in and call me if you know somebody.
Yeah. So you also call the rest of your people 4 times a year. And you've been
everybody in the database. Every single person in the database. Anybody that's ever bought or sold a house with my company gets a call 4 times a year minimum. And that call is just going to be.
What does it sound like?
What's that?
What does the conversation sound like?
Hey, Shanan, it's David Van Noy. Just checking in on you. I wanted to follow up. It's been a while since we talked here. We closed on the house about 30 days ago now, or let's say it's 90 days ago now. just want to check in and see how that's going. If there's anything you need, want to let you know that we keep a strong list of vendors on hand in case you need any referrals for that kind of stuff. We're talking to a lot of clients about refinancing right now, if that's something that you're thinking about. And while I have you, is there anybody that you know that needs my help right now? If that should happen in the future, call me, or text me at this number, 3 call me's.
And when I talked to you, you told me that when you were doing your lead generation every day, this was the highest energy lead gen that you do.
Prospect, to the database? It's my favorite part because it really literally is the part where I really can't believe that I get paid money to do that part, just to call people and talk to them. I love it. I love that part.
Yeah. So if you're thinking, I don't even know if I would ever call my database or should I call my database? I want you to think about, what if you're not? And what percentage of your deals this year out of the 140 came from your database?
So the overall, all buyers and sellers together, 55% of our business came from the database. So past clients, center of influence, or referrals. And we break those up a little bit differently, but all that's really considered the database.
So those people who know you locally think that you are a master cold caller. That's kind of your reputation. However, you're a master caller because you also love calling the people that you've done work with.
Well, yeah, calling expireds and for sale by owners is probably what's notable because I'm pretty consistent with that, and I have fun with that too. But I get a lot of results from the calls to the database. That's my favorite part. So
show us your jar of marbles and explain this. I love this.
You love the marbles.
I'm buying Eddie marbles.
Today.
I'm getting marbles.
So that's today, right? So I bought all these colored marbles, which you thought was kind of funny, and all the marbles represent a different source of business. So today I talked to the reds or expireds, the blue are for sale by owner. That green guy in there, that's an appointment I set with a for sale by owner for tomorrow. The yellow is lead follow-up. The black is past client. And white one, there's one at the bottom, but the white ones are the database. So today was so far, it's been a little heavy on outbound prospecting, but most days I like that to be black and white.
So I was just talking to an agent the other day, David, that there are no good FSBOs and expireds anymore.
They do what?
They said there are no good FSBOs or expireds anymore.
It's still 25% of my business are those sources. And it is a reasonable statement to say, but agents they're always looking for excuses, right? So it's a reasonable statement to say, if somebody did not sell their home in 2020 as good as the market is, that's a high level of acuity. That's someone who's got a real big problem, a really bad house, their expectations are extremely far off the market, or their agent was really, really bad. So that does create kind of a marketplace of less expireds to choose from, for sure. But we still did 20% of my business from that source.
Which would have been 28 deals.
How many?
28.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
that includes for sale by owners.
Okay, I want you to talk about your shadow, because a lot of people say, I have no idea how to time block. I don't know how to stay on target. I don't have a system to make sure that my brain doesn't go down a whole bunch of bunny trails and make sure that I get my lead gen done.
Well, let me outline it for someone, I guess, if they're building it from the ground up. So if you're trying to figure out how to prospect and you're trying to figure out how to structure your day, it starts with a commitment to do the prospecting in the morning. So most of the time the agents will ask questions like, well, don't you catch more people at night? It's about my energy, not theirs. So it's always about my best energy is from about 8:30 to 11:30. That's when I'm most able to make those calls. So that's where the prospecting goes. Lead follow-up and other prospecting can happen, but that's key. So I realized about myself through coaching that I need a babysitter. So if I say I'm going to make these contacts every day, I'll just kind of wander, and maybe I get on a call and we start talking about something else, and then the morning's gone, right? I'm sure real estate agents can understand that or relate to that, right? So with my coach, we realized, like, if there's a bunch of people around listening to me, I'll make some high quality calls and I can set appointments pretty easily. And I do this in a group where we would set 10 or 12 appointments in a day because it was really hyper focused, right? And so my coach is like, how can we make every single day like that? And I'm like, I don't know. If there was someone standing right here that was just watching me every day, she's like, great, hire someone for $10 an hour to stand right here. And that was a few years ago. So in between now and then, I've had hundreds of different shadows, what I call shadows. And I have one currently who I hired for the month of December. I pay him $200 a week. He gets here at 8:15. I have to start dialing at 8:30, and he stands right there until 11:30 every day. And I don't get to play or do anything else.
He just stands there.
He just stands there. He's not allowed to do anything else.
So if you can't afford that, if you can't afford to hire a shadow, who are some of the other people that you've had come in to shadow you that have also helped you that were free?
Well, I let any agent that wants to shadow me anytime, which I know is always kind of a strange thing because people work for different teams and companies and they come in and they're like, why would you let people shadow? A couple important reasons. One, the same reason I'm doing this Zoom right now is because I feel a strong inclination to contribute at a high level. Even though I want to compete and I want to beat everybody in the marketplace, I also want to contribute. So when people watch me, I like to feel like the people that get it are going to do something better, just like this. The other thing is, most of the time they come watch me do it for 3 hours and they run away and say, I could never do that and I can't do that. I actually think that the ones that aren't meant to do it are scared shitless and never come back. And so either way, it serves multiple purposes. So I let anybody that wants to shadow me do it.
And if you're going to take a break, what do you set to make sure that you're not off on a bunny trail too long?
Egg timer.
Okay.
We set that for 10, 12 minutes and I get to take a pee-pee break. And then he comes and tracks me down and shows me the timer and I have to come back. So it's just a series of little hacks that we have, knowing that I get lost. I get on other things. I work on deals. I get off topic talking to people about exciting things, and I forget that I'm supposed to have a hyper focus on making the next call.
So basically, you've just hacked your brain.
I've hacked my habit, and my brain still wanders, but everything else is caged in, and if I'm tied to the desk, and that's the reason I coach, by the way, too, is because from about 1 to 4 in the afternoon, now I just talk about real estate for a couple of hours and it keeps me in the pocket, if you will. And before I might be able to take a lunch or a coffee or something like that, and lunch or coffee ends up just completely out of bounds too. So I don't do lunch or coffee. I don't think about what I'm going to eat or where I'm going to go or any of those things. The day's set.
So basically, and by the way, how do you know who you're going to call every day? I know you use a CRM. They're going to ask me, what CRM do you use?
We use Brevity as a CRM. We use Follow Up Boss for lead follow-up.
Okay.
I use a multitude of different dialers to find data on people, Vulcan 7, Mojo, and I use Crisscross, which is kind of a cold properties for circle prospecting into neighborhoods.
Okay. Okay, so those are just common questions, right? What website do you use? Use two.
Vulcan 7 and Mojo Cells, or Mojo, are the two dialers.
What are the two websites that you use? Brevity? Use Brevity website.
I use Brevity as a CRM to manage the database and the workflow of the transaction.
What are the two websites that you're using? You use
For myself.
Real Geeks?
Oh, Real Geeks. I'm sorry. Real Geeks manages my personal website, thevannnoygroup.com. That's where we push a lot of our lead generation to. And then Brevity also, we have another website through Brevity that's just designed to catch buyers looking for searches and also home valuations. And between both sites, I'll promote both of those by way of advertisement to generate leads as well.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question, because I know everybody's wondering, how do you keep up with all of these leads? what systems are you using, and are they automated?
So the leads that I generate outside of prospecting that we just would be internet leads, raw leads, they're all followed up with by the buyer team. So I have 2 buyer agents that are in Follow Up Boss. They get assigned the leads. They have a system of 3-2-1 to follow up on every single inquiry and cross-reference it to see if they're a seller lead and push that back to me. And so we manage, I guess we track their response time and work on that system to make sure that the leads are getting followed up with properly.
Okay, what's 3-2-1?
3-2-1 is when a lead comes in, you're going to call it 3 times the first day. If you don't get a hold of them, you're going to call them 2 times the next day and then 1 time the third day. So a total of 5 calls minimum is going out on every lead.
And this is automated through your CRM? Through your follow-up boss?
No, that's the way the buyer's agents are trained. So the lead comes in. There are some automated communication pieces, but the phone calls are not automated. That is 5 phone calls that happen from a salesperson from the company within 3 days.
Okay, and those are standards and expectations for your team members, correct?
That's right.
What if they do that?
You know, it's just like any company. We have challenges where we look at all those numbers as a whole. We look at it like on a month-to-month basis, and we look at the speed to lead. So how long is it taking you on average to get to a lead? And we're always working on that number. So if I look at your number and it's 7 hours, you might have a lead that comes in at midnight and it's going to track you all the way until you call them at 8 o'clock the next morning. So 7 hours isn't a crazy number, but I can look at their follow-up. I can see the call. I can hear the call because it's recorded. I can see the text messages and the emails. So we go back and we train on scripts. We train on the system, exactly, how many times we're supposed to call and in what order. But it's always training. It's never punitive. They're required to sell 3 homes a month. So if they're not meeting that expectation, then we're going to go back and review the system, review the process. Unfortunately, it's been a while since I had to get rid of somebody based on that metric.
Yeah, because you've set them up. So they're gonna want to know what is all that little system in? Like, it's in Follow Up Boss, correct? Like that's where they're tracking all of they're pushing out their calls, their texts, their emails, all through Follow Up Boss.
Yes, and I'm just like every other system that we have. I'm just looking at the averages and then bringing it back to them as a coachable opportunity and saying, it's basically our company standard that you're going to reach out to them 5 times minimum if we haven't received contact. And it looks like your average contact, you're reaching out to them 1.8. What can we do to get that number up?
Okay. So if you're not converting leads out there, you're probably not calling enough.
Yeah, leads are converted generally somewhere between 10 and 15 contacts. So most of the time people believe, like, I called them, I left a message, I called them the second day, they must not want to do anything. And so if that's 2 or maybe even consider it 3 contacts, I'd consider it 2. The average contact is going to convert to an appointment at about 12.
Okay. So here's another question while we're sitting on systems, because I want to address a couple of questions that we had from yesterday from Kimberly Albertelli, all the way from Boston. She's one of my favorite clients that I coached as an agent. After, like, what program do you intake a client, do an appointment, follow-up system look like, and then after closing? What program do you use that on, and is that automated?
So when an appointment is set, the first thing that's going to happen is Follow Up Boss. We're going to set the appointment in Follow Up Boss. The reason is it will invite the client automatically, and I include some links to our company along with my bio in the appointment reminder.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So that's going to say we can share that out. Anything we talk about, we can share it out because so if somebody wants to see any of that stuff, they can. Follow Up Boss is first. When I click a tag in Follow Up Boss, it's going to automatically add it to Brivity. It's also going to put it right on my calendar so my assistant has it. Right when that happens, she's going to go create a packet, a pre-listing packet that we're going to have delivered to the house before the appointment every time.
Okay.
That was the first part. She asked about after. Well, I guess we can get to that if you feel like that's important. That's a different system.
After closing. So one of our questions is after closing, obviously you have a very good calling schedule for your sphere, right? And your past clients. Where does that live? Does that live
in Brevity?
It's in Brevity. Okay. That's
in Brevity. So once they become a client, we'll say that's kind of the threshold. Follow-up Boss is lead follow-up. That's the only thing we do is we manage leads, discuss leads, add them to a drip campaign to create engagement. Once they've engaged or set an appointment, the intention is to move them to Brevity, get them set up on a market report, get them set up on listing searches if they're also a buyer, and also manage that relationship forever, which means we're taking on the data of all of their information, from their birthday to their social links to anything we want to know about that client long term. So when I communicate with them forever, it's going to be in Brevity.
Okay. And then I want to just touch on this while we're right here in Brevity. Where does your contract to close system live, and how automated is that?
That's probably something that I don't get to show off enough that I'm probably more proud of than anything is it's really our entire workflow from pre-listing to active on the market to pended to after closing. And that would include the listing appointment as well. So what I like to do is to take that entire list and determine exactly how many points, like check marks, my assistants are going to do for the clients on that list. And we'll get together once a week, and we call it team building or KPI, which is key performance indicators. And we'll work on how to add. We have a goal right now to add 25 items to the total list of services we provide the clients before January 1st.
So if I'm on your team and I'm a director of operations or marketing, listing manager, whatever, I go in, I log into my Brevity, and I literally see what my tasks are for the day, and I don't have to remember anything because it's all there, and my brain just has to go task, click, task, click, task, click.
Everything down to the handwritten note that is written by a robot that comes from me is in that system with a link, with login information, but it's a consistent action item for us to every week to go back and say, is this in the right spot? Does the client need more information than what we're giving them? Do they need it sooner? Are there any problems with it? So yes, the entire checklist is there. It is, for lack of a better phrase, stupid proof. They can check the box, but it frees them up to do the number one thing that I asked them to do, which is communicate with our clients.
So I want to go back. If you're an admin watching this and you've been fighting doing an automated system like a Brevity or a paperless checklist or paperless pipeline or anything like that, what would you tell an admin who's trying to keep it all in their head?
Well, I think what's important to recognize is that you're probably working for an agent who implements 5 different systems a year and doesn't follow through on 4 of them. And so if that's part of your problem, then that's not really your problem. A lot of administrative, it's my belief that it's never their fault, it's always my fault. So I had times with Brevity where the checkbox is there and it says do this, but it didn't say do this and this. And it's like, okay, so, but I don't look at that and say you need to get better at this. I figure I need to tighten that system. So I believe it's the team leader's job to make that system tight first. But if you're administrative and you have the ability to control some of this or bring this to the team, automation is the key. It's the key to communication. It's the key to service, because most agents that struggle to get above any level, wherever you're stuck, we got stuck at 100, we got stuck at 90 deals, we got stuck at 110 deals. Whenever you're stuck, it's because you're spending too much time considering what we're supposed to do next, and did we do it or did we not do it? And if you could eliminate that and offload all of the thought associated with it, it frees you up to give service.
Yeah, which is our number one goal. One of the questions I have for you, and you and I talked a little bit about lead follow-up, which is one of the questions in here. I'm looking at my Facebook and my notes when I'm looking down, by the way. You talked about how important lead follow-up is. So when you're doing your lead generation, part of those calls are your lead follow-up. You said 70% of your business comes from lead follow-up.
It's my belief that 70% of anybody's business comes from lead follow-up. So if you multiply that number times whatever your goal is, that's how much it's worth to your company personally to have a good lead follow-up system.
So let's say your goal is 300,000 in GCI. That means that your follow-up system it'll fall to the level of the system, right? And it's 70%, which means $210,000 of your total GCI will come from your follow-up systems. To me, you can't afford not to have these systems. Short-term, long-term, because you talked about you've got short-term drip systems and you have a long-term drip system. Talk to them about that.
Well, follow-up boss is what we're going to use to engage. Brevity is what we're going to use to communicate with them over time. In follow-up boss, there's a series of texts and emails that just basically say, we're trying to get a hold of you and we'd like to talk to you about your home to sell or home to buy. So that's a drip campaign, if you will, but it's an engagement campaign. And it's really, at that point, I guess you could almost call it a branding piece as well. If someone's in a long sales cycle, but we don't know it, then they might come back and go, oh, David Van Noy, I remember that name. I'm not sure why, but okay, yeah, actually we are thinking of doing something. Now, the long-term plan is once they become a client, if you want to call it a drip campaign, it's my intention that every single person in our database in Brevity is set up on what we call a market report. And I have virtual assistants that will start some of those. But every time I call a client, if I was going to call you in the database and I said, Shannon, how's everything going? Calling about the house. I'm going to have your profile up. I'm going to confirm some things, a good email address, the phone number, and then the address. Did we sell you the home? Any of those types of notes. And I'm going to set you up on a market report. So I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, probably right now the house is worth $425, something like that. Oh yeah, that's what we were thinking. We saw the one down the street. So then I'm in the market report, it's setting them up on everything from 375 to 475. So every month at, probably minimum, unless they're hotter than that, they're going to receive a market report from me that says, here's the homes that sold in the neighborhood. Gives them a chance to engage, reply, and it makes them feel like I'm in touch with exactly what's selling in the neighborhood and see the name.
So you touch that one time and then it's automated monthly.
Automated. Yeah, I never have to touch it again. So then what I'll do if I want to engage with, like if I said I got to find a deal right now, I want to find a lead, someone who wants to buy or sell right now. I could go to market reports. I could filter it and say who's looking at this report most frequently and most recently. And I get a list of 20 people that have clicked on that thing 11 times in the last 2 weeks. Well, that's a pretty high quality list of people that I could call and say, how do you like the market report? Have you seen some of the comparable sales? If you sold the home, where would you go next?
Yeah, because I think sometimes right now with the market, they're surprised how much equity they're sitting on.
They're surprised at all of it. We're still showing houses. People aren't dying right on site from COVID. The real estate market is continuing to move. They're surprised by every single piece of what's happening out there.
Yeah.
When I talk to people, they can't believe that any of it's still moving.
With your high percent of referral rate, you must have a superior customer service. And I want you to explain. Now, this is really high level. So those of you who have teams on here, or those of you who are really detailed, and this is like going to be your hack of the year, talk to us about the Net Promoter Score.
The Net Promoter Score is something that took me a long time to accept, but I think it's behind the database, it's the biggest opportunity that the company has. But I think it's the biggest opportunity for any agent listening, and I'll tell you why. So a Net Promoter Score, if you just do a quick search on it, if you don't know, it's basically a 1 through 10 rating. And you've worked with companies that have asked you for a 1 to 10 rating on their service before. If you answer 1 through 7, or 1 through 6, I'm sorry, you're basically what's called a detractor, which means that people will go out of their way to make sure that people do not do business with you. That's a detractor. And every business has those. And then the 7s and the 8s are neutral, right? And those people just won't go out of their way either way to say, don't use them or yes, you should. And the 9s and 10s are our raving fans. So a raving fan as a 9 and 10 are the people that we're trying to get referrals from most often. So every single one of my buyers and sellers is going to get automated and a phone call from me saying, now that you're at this point in the transaction, your home just went live on the market, how likely do you feel on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how likely do you feel that you'd refer us to your friends or your family? And they say, well, we've had a couple of hiccups. We like everything so far, but we're an 8. Okay, I can appreciate that. You're an 8. What would it take to make you a 10? Well, we would have liked to have A, B, and C. So now I have a chance to get in front of some of those things. But if I'm an individual agent and I don't have any staff, but I still do a deal and I call them at the end of closing and say, listen, you've been in the house a week. Now the dust has settled a little bit. Do me a favor. The only way that I can get better is if you help me with this part. On a scale from 1 to 10, how do you feel in terms of likelihood to refer me? Well, to be honest with you, David, I'm a 6. Would you tell me why? And if you listen to that answer, you're going to find out everything you need to know about breaking through that next threshold. So that customer feedback is something that we miss in real estate a lot. And I think a lot of people just think, well, yeah, he doesn't care. He got a commission check. He could care less. And by the way, I feel that way about some companies I do business with also, and they don't feel that way. And so just by calling and saying, we care about what you think about the experience, even if there was a couple of hiccups, you'd be surprised at how many people will turn into 10s, and you need 10s.
Well, and what you're doing though too is you're just setting up your future next client, right? Like you're setting up the customer experience going forward. So you fix that problem. Now, you also told me that you have these conversations with your whole team in different stages to make sure that your whole team is in alignment with this. Tell us about that.
Well, so if you have a team and let's say you're managing one assistant, and I think that's an easy example. It's difficult to come to that assistant and say, I need you to improve, right? Because they're like, what do you want me to do? I'm working hard. I'm working all the time. How do I get better at this? So this is a metric that we can all agree upon. It's the consumer's rating of each department. So the listing agent as a department receives a score. The listing coordinator as a department, the buyer team, and the transaction coordinator, they all receive a score. So if the score is a 7 with the buyer agents and it's a 9.2, now we have a conversation where I can say, listen, you're a 9.2 and that's amazing. I feel like you could be a 9.5. What could I do? And what could I add to your system that would help you raise that number from a 9.2 to a 9.5? Now the conversation, instead of saying, I don't like the way you're doing something, even though you're 9.2, there's always a metric that we can strive for. And that's the difficult part about everything we do in the business is it's all based on kind of how we feel things are going. This is how I feel the day went. That's how I feel. I don't feel it. I know it.
What happens if you go home and that glass isn't full?
That's not going to happen. But if there's a day when the glass is half full, no pun intended, we're going to look at that over time, and we're not going to judge one day and measure it with a teaspoon and act like I need to change everything. But if we look at 30 days and say, okay, it happened 3 times in the month of December, and it usually happens on Wednesday. What's happening on Wednesday? Well, here's what's happening. So now I have information. So it's not punitive, and that never worked for me because I hung money up on the ceiling. At one time, I had 50 $10 bills hanging from the ceiling, and I'd make 50 contacts, and any contact I missed, $10 would go to the staff. When I'd pass out $200 at a time, going, all right, you sons of bitches, here's your $200. And they were like happy that our goals were not aligned, right? It didn't work. I'm better with a carrot, not a stick. So I've tried multiple different things. It's not about punitive. It's about learning about your own habits.
I love the marble system. I showed it to Eddie yesterday, and I told him we're buying marbles for next year because I think that's one of our key things is making sure that we stay on track and get those calls done, right? Like we should be calling.
I got it from the book Atomic Habits. I was listening to Atomic Habits, which is an excellent book, probably my favorite last year. And he was talking about a sales guy that had 2 jars. One was full of 200 paper clips, and he'd move them for each sales call, and he'd make 200 sales calls a day. Well, I just want to measure contacts and by different sources. So I was like, how could I do that? And I got on Amazon and found these big marbles. So that's how I got it.
That's by Tim Ferriss, right? Atomic Habits.
No, that's James Clear.
James Clear. Yep. Nope. That's an awesome one. So I want to get to some of these questions. I've gone through most of my topics that we talked about, and I'm going to come back into inexpensive and expensive lead gen inside of some of these questions. So what are you doing differently with the market shift because of COVID to get listings? Have you felt
I think it's a great
shifted?
Well, so let's just talk about the fundamentals of the marketplace. Has there ever been a better time to list your home than right now?
Nope.
Right? Have sellers been more in control of the sale, more in control of the resolutions, more in control of the pricing and the timeline than ever before? So I think it's an education piece at every level, and even whether that's an expired or for sale by owner, or especially with the database, I believe that it's my obligation to reach out and let people know you've been hearing some things about the real estate market. I imagine you've heard it's really great, but let's talk specifically about what's going on in the marketplace and who could take advantage of it, which, by the way, is always true in every market. It just happens right now to really serve the sellers.
Yeah, so you're still lead generating the same type of sellers that you always have.
I've made a little bit of a shift over the last 6 months from some of the expireds and for sale by owners to more of the database. But see, this is where people, like you said, they'll say, oh, the expireds are dead. I'm off of that. And they don't even have a database. And now they're trying to generate leads on Zillow or whatever they're doing. That's going to fail. So it's a dial, not a switch. So if expireds are a dial, when the market's hard and the average days on market is 65, I'm going to turn the dial up on expireds and put more of my marbles towards that source. If I turn that down, then I'm going to turn something else up, but I never get rid of a source altogether, because every good real estate business needs a minimum of 5 good sources of leads.
So what are your 5 good sources? By the way, do you buy any upfront leads? I know you do pay-per-click. Do you buy Zillow leads?
Yes, not very much.
Okay.
So for years, I didn't buy any leads up front whatsoever. In the past year, not because of the marketplace, but because of our own production limitations, I've decided to start buying some leads because we have the budget for it. My advertising expense year to date is right at 2% of my gross. So if you look at a profit and loss statement, most businesses spend a little bit more than 2% on marketing, but it's my intention next year to take that to about 5%. So that's just a place where I can put some dollars and put some of our systems to work. But it's my belief that you should not buy leads until you have a really good command and understanding of what we talk about as the really inexpensive opportunities to create business. And the inexpensive sources are going to be, number one is going to be your database, as much as people are going to fight that and look for the secret answers. And I know that there's going to have to be people on here that are like, there's got to be some secret to that because I'm not doing that. So the database, past clients, and center of influence, you have to engage with people at a high level and come up with a reason to do it, and educating them on the market is number one. For sell by owners and expireds are raising their hand and saying, I have a home to sell and there's no homes available to buy. So how is that not a clear opportunity for people to at least reach out and make contact with something that they're comfortable with? You've got just listed, just sold, which means circle prospecting around houses that you sold or your company sold. Just call into the neighborhood and say, we know every time a home sells, usually 2 or more will sell right away. So when do you plan on moving?
Okay. So
and if you do that, say it again.
Time out. How expensive are the things that you just listed?
You could buy all those lead sources, I think, for $200 a month.
Yeah.
The database is free.
Right.
Expireds and for sale by owners, I think, are $175 a month, maybe.
You can get them on Red X for $80 a quarter.
Okay, there you go. Even cheaper than I thought.
Yeah. Or you could just go free.
Or you could go free. Or when they show up as expired in MLS, you can go knock on their door.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure. A lot of people are like, you guys must be spending a lot of money to get all these deals. You're spending 2% of your marketing budget, 2% of your overall GCI.
Yes, it's a very, very low number. And honestly, that's up from what it's traditionally been over the past 5 or 6 years, some of our best years ever. 0 internet leads, zero, none of that.
What are some expensive lead sources? Because we talked about this too. So we have a variety of people on this on GSD. And I loved when you did your intro yesterday and you go, get stuff done. That was so good. I loved your pause. Anyway, what are some expensive things? We've got some high-end teams on here doing 40, 50, 80, 100 million plus. What are some of the lead sources?
Well, one of the things I thought about, because I thought about this question quite a bit actually over the past few days, is we recognize things that are expensive ways to generate leads, but we don't often recognize how much it's costing us to be bad at certain things. Okay.
Explain.
So it's expensive to buy Zillow. It's expensive to buy Realtor.com. Because, it might be $60 a lead in some cases. That's expensive. That doesn't mean I don't have $60. That means as a business model, I can generate leads in some sources for $5 a lead and Zillow's $60. That's a high level. Then there's referral sites that we've talked about. There's a bunch of them out there that are basically generating those leads and selling them back to us at a 25, sometimes 35% referral fee. Not to say you shouldn't do that or make it a blend of part of your business, but it's an expensive it's an expensive source, right? Yep. But in addition to that, the part that people are missing out on, what's costing you the most amount of money, the most expensive thing in your business is going to be, number one, is going to be commission cutting.
Okay. So that was one of the questions.
So, yeah, we had some good questions on the commission cutting thing. And somebody asked me something that kind of alluded to the fact that I take reduced commissions, and I don't. My average, out of 85 listings that we sold in 2020, there was 3 listings that were taken under 6%. 2 of them were over $1 million, and 1 of them was my parents.
Okay, so, parents got a break, fine.
I told them, you get a break for being my parents, even though I'm worth it, right? But commission cutting is a very expensive thing that real estate agents get involved in. And when they see anybody selling anything at a high level, they always say, he must be giving that away. Or they confuse the buyer agent compensation as always being half of the commission, and it's not always half. And that's prevalent in a lot of other markets, but not necessarily in the Kansas City market. The other thing that's costing people the most amount of money, I wrote a couple of things that I think we can all agree are super expensive things. 1, lack of a business plan. 2, lack of lead follow-up. 3, lack of leverage, which is going to be somebody helping you transact the deal. And then a big one is lack of the right words to use. So objection handling or just a conversation. All of these things are costing you. We said lead follow-up is 70% of your income. If you are on this call and you're like, if I get a lead, where does it go? I might email myself. I might put it on my to-do list. I might write it down. I might put it on my calendar. You are costing yourself $200,000, $300,000 a year on any goal. You're costing yourself that much money. So if we're looking at, well, there's some certain things in my business that are costing me way too much money. No, the number one thing you can do is go out and increase your revenue by addressing some of these deficiencies. The number 2 thing you could do is cut some of those expenses.
Okay, so if you're listening right now, I would love for you to start posting questions in underneath this video right here. I'm going to finish up the questions from the other day, and then I'm going to jump back to that other Facebook group. So one of the other question is, what is your best marketing piece?
I saw that question. I think that's interesting. My best marketing piece. So here's my best marketing piece is a listing taken, priced well with my sign in the yard saying coming soon, being sold. And well, then I tell everybody within 20 to 40 houses that I secured that listing. I sell the home and go back and tell all those 20 to 40 people that I sold the home. That's the number one thing you can do from a marketing perspective to get more business.
So that would be circle prospecting.
Circle prospecting alone isn't the best. No, that's not the number one form. I'm saying fundamentally the number one thing you can do from a consumer standpoint to gain more business is take a qualified listing, tell them you did it, sell the listing, and then go back and communicate that you sold it.
Okay.
Because I know people that ask that question are like, there's got to be some mailer that just gets a really high hit, or there's got to be some ad that we're running on Facebook. We do have those things going, but those are not really high quality, high level opportunities. Those are a grind. Those are beating your head up against a wall, and just those are the extra deals.
What system do you use, or what program do you use to get the 20 people around that house? Is it Vulcan?
Vulcan has that service inside of there. Cold Properties sells that data as well, and so does a company called Crisscross.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. Another question is, if you had to choose just one lead source, what would you pursue? What's the coveted thing?
Yeah, that was the coveted one thing question. I love the one thing because I get that a lot. Like, what's the one thing that's really helped your business? The one thing that's really helped my business has always been knowing that it's not one thing. It's almost everything, from my mindset to what I eat, to how much I exercise, to the words coming out of my mouth, to the books that I read, to every single person that I give access to me. So nobody asked that question, but that's the answer to that question. But the answer on that is going to be the database. If there's one thing, if you could spend your entire budget, your entire day, every single day doing something, it would be communicating with your database.
And, this is where we started this whole GSD group, David, is, I shared all of my closed group, Facebook group, I've talked about that, how we do Shanan Group Fun, how we just get referrals because we're fun and we're inclusive and we're creating a community. And it still amazes me that agents go, I'm never going to call my database. They're the fun people.
I'm not fun at all.
They chose you.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to get fun.
I'm not. I'm not fun. I like to have fun, but I don't consider myself fun necessarily. Maybe I am, but I'm going to call those people as a professional and educate them on the market, or just tell them we have a house that we listed. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that we don't do more of that.
Okay, a couple questions here. David, when you have an unrepresented buyer from a sign call on your listing, how do you support with the seller remaining at 6%?
That's a good question. So it's important to understand that every single deal is a business decision and a business conversation. So I believe that what we do to support a sale and create a sale is not just about the grunt work that we do to make it happen. I told an expired last week, when my sign goes in your yard, you're going to get a different experience. The people are going to look at it differently. The offers are going to happen differently. I believe that at a very high level, and that is what happened. So when agents try to justify their commission based on how much work they've done, they're getting involved in the way the seller looks at it. So a commission is a solution. The reason a commission is on a sliding scale and we get paid more on bigger sales is because we're like an insurance policy. Because the bigger the deal, the higher the acuity, the bigger the problems, the better words you better hope that your person is using to make sure that that thing stays on track. So if a deal comes together and you solve the problem, the commission is not the conversation, the solution is. So if the seller says, all right, we've got a buyer for the house, now let's talk about this commission. The question is, have we solved your problem? And did we agree at the time that you hired me to do it, that would be compensated at a high level if it was easy? As agents, we try to make things hard to show them how hard we're working. Absolutely not. I could get paid 6% for a 3-minute conversation if I solve a lot of people's problems.
So it's really understanding. I mean, you're a master of scripts. You practice a lot. I've shared with this group, when I first started back in sales in 2016, I had 3 role play partners for a year, 30 minutes with each. So I did 3 times a week. Now, this is after 10,000 hours of speaking and training and coaching and doing all of that, right? However, the practice is huge, because then all of a sudden it's in your bones, it's in your reflexes. How much do you practice, David?
Every day. So every day I role play with my team first, and every day I'm going to role play with some of the people that I coach. Both ways is very important. So if somebody, it's the only profession in the world where you can just go out and practice on people for $10 or $15, $20,000 at a time. Any other profession in the world, it would be mandatory that for $20,000. Look, football players, Patrick Mahomes, they're paying $50 million a year. He goes to practice every day for 8 hours a day, minimum. And they make him practice. You have to practice. If you're practicing on people, you're going to get beat by me every day.
Well, and what I like to say is you're actually malpracticing, because it's costing you so much money to go and wing it at a listing presentation.
Yes, sir.
Another question. What book are you reading right now, and any that you would recommend right now?
Yeah. So one of the cool things I found, I didn't make it up. I read a lot of the books on Kindle, and I highlight this stuff on Kindle. I like paperbacks, but I'm reading on Kindle. I found this app called Readwise. So instead of scrolling Instagram or Facebook or something like that, I open Readwise, and it actually scrolls the highlights from the books that I've read. And that's been really cool. So I love that. I'm reading the 7 Powers of Questions. So I've been working with the team a lot on how important questions are and how a good quality question completely changes an interaction altogether, where we would take a question like, are you working with an agent? Well, yeah, I'm working with an agent. Well, the question's always answer yes to that question, right? Yeah, are you working with an agent? Yeah, that means don't bother me. Or, yeah, I don't need an agent, right? But the question could be, do you have an agent that when they find a really good property that's not on the MLS yet, are they calling you with it first? Well, no, I don't have that. Great, that's exactly the reason that you and I should meet. So that little exchange, the paradigm shift that's available there for a buyer is, well, no, I don't have anybody that's really looking out for me and trying to find stuff. I just send some stuff to this lady whenever something comes on the market, and if she can show me, she shows me. So 7 Power of Questions. I'm also reading the New Gold Standard, which is the Ritz-Carlton Customer Service Guide. We're using that in conjunction with the Net Promoter Score, and I'm working on a budget for every listing over $750,000 that we're going to spend $250 on that listing over about 6 or 8 touches from the time I meet them until the time that they close.
Okay. What other questions do you have? We've got him for like 4 more minutes. I'd love to see some more questions. We've got about 30 currently watching here. What would you love to ask David? I asked him a lot of questions the other day. I got all my deep, dark secrets out of him the other day when we were talking, which is what was important for me to follow up. I've gotten all my boxes covered, Coach. I've gone through all the boxes on my sheet. Can you believe it?
Love filling in all those boxes. It makes you feel accomplished, doesn't it?
How important is a business plan? I mean, you know that I've written this crazy class with my partner, Stacy, and I know that you love business planning. If you're an agent and you don't have a plan, what would you tell them?
You know, the business plan is so I go through that process with multiple agents every year. The business plan is always something like, oh, I need to do that. I'm going to set aside a bunch of time to sit down and really just map my life out. And it never happens that way. It happens in 20 to 30 minute blocks. So you have to plan it that way. You have to say twice a week, I'm going to take 20 minutes. I'm just going to look at and think about what's our plan right now. And it's got to be a basic plan that I'm connected to. So how many people a day am I going to talk to? How many people a week? How many listing appointments? How many listings taken? How many price reductions? How many deals will fall apart? How many buyers are we going to sell? The basics of the business. And most people feel like they don't have data, so they don't fill that out. Well, a business plan is a working, fluid document. You fill that business plan out, at some point in the year, you become disconnected with what you've written, right? I'm not teaching you anything on this, but my thought on it is, it's got to be something that's really ingrained in your process to look back at that. And what I notice is this. When I set the business plan, I reached the goal this year, by the way, that's been on my business plan for a couple of years. I realized that it always takes me a couple years to get to a previous plan. But I also realize that that's part of the plan, that I have that in place, that I have a 3-year and a 5-year. And if I'm reaching for that stuff, then I'm always ending up where I intend to, just not always at the right time. And it's important to remember that it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there, as long as you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, this is why I switched completely out of a 12-month plan to go to a 12-week plan, because it's fluid. And as a coach for years, you know, we would do their recap every month. Then we'd do a quarterly review, and then they'd be behind. They just throw it in a drawer and never look at it again.
Yeah, it's garbage.
Gone. Okay, a couple more questions. What is your day? When does your day start? When does your day end?
5 o'clock, wake up, breakfast, make breakfast for the kids. It's like 6:40. So 5 o'clock, wake up, work out. Every day that you work, you should work out minimum. If you're over 40, every day that you're alive, you should work out. All right, so that's what I believe on that. Maybe over 30, depending on if you're big boned. And then I'm going to be at the office by 8:15, and then I have my shadow that starts. So we start prospecting at 8:30. I typically leave the office.
How often do you take your kids to school and drop them off?
Every day.
Okay. I wanted you to add that, because I freaking love your V Squad videos on Facebook. And you have 4 kids.
Yeah, 4 kids, and they're all, you know, they all go to school, and I take them there every day. And sometimes I film some of that stuff and put it on Facebook, so people know that that I have a heart.
You have a giant heart, especially for those babies. And you have triplets. I mean, you have 2 girls, 2 boys. They're adorable. If you're not friends with them on Facebook, go watch the V Squad. Holy crap, it's awesome. Okay, what do your weekends look like?
Saturday is always a work day for me. It's a little lighter, and I enjoy that day because I get to work on systems. I get to do lead follow-up, but it's on the schedule as a work day. Sunday is not a work day.
Family day.
That's it. Yeah.
What time do you end your day?
So I get home for dinner usually around between 6:45 and 7 o'clock every night.
Okay.
I could probably be there sooner, but at this point, I feel like we have a lot of exciting things to work on.
Okay. Weakness. Let's see. We're going to put the colors in the group. A lot of people ask, what are the colors again? We'll post that.
Oh,
just text
okay.
me. Yeah, we'll post that in the group. I have a weak sphere of influence. How do you expand it to a stronger base?
So people don't recognize who's actually in the database because they don't identify that there's people in there they should be asking for referrals. So you have to do a couple of things first. Number one, go to your checkbook and see who you're spending money with. If you look at your if you look at the company's bills and you determine who you're spending money with, that's a group of people. Honestly, the one that usually gets people to jar loose on that is the person that cuts their hair. They're like, oh yeah, she's been cutting my hair for 10 years. I never asked her for a referral. Why? If anybody's doing business out of you have to understand, start with wherever it is. Is it on your phone? Download it, get it somewhere, and at least start collecting it. Right? So the number one company in the world is Amazon. They collect every single time I click on something. They know that I'm clicking on it, and all of that information about me is what makes them a multi-billion-dollar company. So my company's objective is to know more about the people that we work with for that reason. So you got to start thinking about the people, they're everywhere.
One of the favorite exercises we always did in Bold was called the yellow page exercise, where you start with the A's and you go, who's my accountant? Who's my auto mechanic?
Did you see what I did yesterday on that? You didn't. I posted on Facebook. I posted a list of all the vendors, like examples, and I just put it on my Facebook and I said, tag yourself if you have a business. And I already have like 40 people that have just tagged it and raised their hand and said, I'd like to give and get referrals from you. Now I'm going to go back through and call each one of those people and talk to them about how we can do that.
Okay.
There's an idea.
I'm stealing that. I hope you all wrote that down. I'm all about vendors. That's an awesome way to get them to tag themselves. And then obviously, if you have a closed group, you're going to put those vendors in your closed group too, so that you can highlight them and help their businesses grow and create a more community. Do you take calls, negotiate deals, etc., after you get home or on Sunday?
So typically, so I don't handle that part of our company. The offer process comes through to Janae, who's been with me for 10 years. I do prospect, lead follow-up, and appointments. That's what I do. Negotiations and presentation of offers happens Monday through Saturday, typically because we also have to talk to the lenders involved in the sale. So most offers are presented in that time, are presented Monday morning at 9 o'clock.
Okay. So if not, how do you communicate with those agents and your clients if they call you during those times?
So I don't want to make it too complex. I'm not going to manage most of that communication because I'm not the person they want to talk to on that. But when I'm an individual agent, like a lot of people are, there is a time for us to do business and there's a time for us to not do business. I don't believe that it should be this hard, like I never answer the phone when I'm at dinner or anything like that. You have to, if you're doing everything you're supposed to do during the day and you're managing your time properly, there shouldn't be a whole lot that flows to you. If you find that your phone's ringing a lot at night, it's because you haven't leveled expectations and you haven't done your job during the day. Most of the people call me at 9 o'clock haven't worked all day. So we say, we'll call you tomorrow, and they're offended by that. But it's not about us. It's about their schedule. So if you're struggling with that, it's because, one, you don't respect your own schedule, and two, you don't respect other people and what they're doing in their job. We don't have that problem a lot.
Any fleeting thoughts that you want to leave people with of any of the conversations that we've covered today?
Fleeting thought, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to everybody about some of the systems. I mean what I say about sharing those systems with everybody. That's something that I've always believed in and always done. If there's people in our market, it's pretty common that because of our direct business strategy, that people think that we're difficult to deal with, just because we represent our clients at a high level. But we have a very open door policy when it comes to everything that we do to serve the clients. The customer experience and the clients are first. And it's my belief also that the agents that we cooperate with deserve a really high level of respect and service from us as well, even though sometimes it's difficult for us to engage in that relationship. So when I have a group of people that I talk to that are also in our market, I like to share that thought because it is one of my company's initiatives.
So you and I first met. We've never actually met in person, which is hilarious. You realize that, right?
Is that true?
It's true. I promise you it's true. We first met because I was at another company and you sent me a referral to go compete on because it was in my market and not in your area. And you thought, all right, I'm going to make a referral fee.
You know what's better? No, you know what happened? I called the for sale by owner. This is what happened. I called the for sale by owner. I said, I want to set an appointment. He said, I've already interviewed 5 people. I'm tired. I don't want to interview more agents. And I said, fine. Since you're on the phone, it's my obligation to help you anyways. Tell me the 5 people you've interviewed, and I'll tell you who to choose. He says the 5. I said, these are the 2 you should consider. You were one, and there was one other. And I said, let me look real quick, and I'm going to look at stats. I'm going to tell you who you need to hire. I looked you up based on his area. I said, you need to hire her. I didn't know you. I looked at your numbers. He said, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And he hired you and he got the home sold.
That was a different one.
Was it?
You referred me one in Western Lenexa. I was on my way transferring companies and you sent out 2 because he said, if you don't Lenexa, you're not going to come list my house. And you looked up and said, okay, who's out there? And that's how we first met. And then like Funny. 6 months later, I was having trouble with a seller and I referred him back to you. Remember that one? The seller out of California that was difficult and wanted to cut our commission right at the end. And you called me and you go, hey, you're my partner on this. What do you think? And I said, hell no. And he goes, that's what I think too. Hell no, we're not cutting our commission. And you sold that one. So anyway, I want you guys to know that everybody that comes on here on GSD and interviews are people that Stacy or I have great relationships with. We are putting you with people that really come from a high level of contribution. And we're really here to help you build your freaking systems and get shit done so that you quit having excuses to not have crazy, awesome numbers. And that's really it, right? All right. Yeah. Anything else before we turn off our live? I don't have any more questions.
Cool. I'll take them. If they want to post them on there, I'll share screenshots or links or whatever you guys want.
Okay, definitely the color marbles. Thank you guys so much for joining us today in GSD. We'll look forward to talking to you next week.